Hello and welcome to Worlds Apart. At his latest meeting with the Indian counterpart, Chinese President Xi Jinping said that it was important for the dragon and the elephant to come together and try to create a more hospitable ecosystem for the two of them. What does it mean in practical terms, and how it may affect other geopolitical animals, big and small? Well, to discuss that, I'm now joined by Zhang Weiwei, Director of the China Institute at Fudan University. It's a great pleasure, great honor for me to talk to you. Thank you very much for being available.
Pleasure for me as well.
Now, it's no secret that President Xi's cooperative call to India, at least partially, is influenced by the common problem in the form of Donald Trump's tariffs. Do you think this challenge is challenging enough to help the two countries to not only speak, but also to change the way of their engagement across the board and across the contested border?
On the part of China, things would be much easier because China is always or stand for long-termism. As Xi Jinping told the Prime Minister Modi, he said we should take a strategic and long-term perspective on Sino-Indian relations. Well, he says strategic, which means you have to see this global trend from unipolarity to multipolarity. And for a long-term perspective, you have to put the Sino-Indian relations in our long history. We're together peacefully, friendly with each other for thousands of years. So why not, we are simply defined by border disputes, by this legacy left over from the British colonialists. I think these are the long-term visions. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, India will also take a strategic and long-term perspective on that. My only concern is, yes, symbolically, China, India shake hands, and Russia, Putin is also there. Three countries shake hands. This is very good for demonstrating the rise of the West vis-à-vis the decline of the West. This is very good. But for India to have a long-term commitment to improving Sino-Indian relations, it will take more effort because India's political system is such that following the Indian media has been always very hostile to China for one reason or another. But given that political system and the media's role in India, so they have perhaps more to do in terms of trying to have a better relation with China.
Now, I'm sure you know that the Indian side would also see themselves as strategic and long-term thinkers. They also take pride, legitimately so, in the wisdom of their civilization. And I think it also has to be noted that the deterioration of relationship between India and China, especially over the border issue, took place under the watch of the same leaders, under President Xi and under Prime Minister Modi. Do you think anything substantially changed since 2020 when those clashes occurred? Anything substantially changed in order to, truly move forward?
There were already tremendous progress in terms of de-escalation of the border dispute. Whatever has happened is the two sides have started this disengagement from military forces, and which is positive. Now with Donald Trump's tariff war on India, which is about 50%, which means we don't do any trade anymore. And obviously India being an independent nation, it's not happy at all. And especially India feel a kind of grudge, China buys Russian oil and petrol, but they can do, we cannot do. And India is being discriminated against. So whether this India's new position on the United States is understandable.
Okay. Can I ask you about this position? Because Indians have long been courted by the Americans. They have long been treated as a special case, getting lots of exemptions from even American sanctions against Russia. Do you think Indian new position vis-à-vis the United States and perhaps vis-à-vis China is temporary reactive, or does it have a chance of being long-term? Because it's understandable at this point of time they are offended, but do you think it will last?
This is also a question. It had to do with the nature of the leadership. If you look at the Chinese leadership and the Russian leadership, both Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping are really statesmen. They have long vision. And for India, you have different voices. For instance, when United States Donald Trump launched his trade whatever on China, higher and higher and higher. I remember India's trade minister, or another minister, I forgot, he was quite pleased. He said, oh, that's an opportunity for India to make this open. He said openly. So from Chinese point of view, this is very short-sighted. In other words, you fail to understand the changing world. We made a calculation. I said openly many times back in 2018. I said China is already a bigger economy than the United States. The U.S. economically depends far more on China than vice versa. I said that when Donald Trump, during his election campaign, he said he will levy 60% tariff on China. I said to American reporters, make it 600%. Your supermarket will be empty or half empty. But India at that time did not see this. This is United States powerful, China was weaker, and China will in the end, lost a lot, the war. So this wrong calculation. Hopefully, Indian leadership will learn. Now, the famous line from Henry Kissinger, it's dangerous to be enemy of the United States, but it's fatal to be its ally.
Well, and, it also shows you that any geopolitical event can play out in many different ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes what you wish upon others may happen to you as well, which, by the way, I think is one of China's proverbs. Now, let me ask you about American policy specifically, because under Donald Trump, they are so unusual that it is hard to understand whether these tariffs should be conceptualized as the US's tariffs or Donald Trump's tariffs. And, determining that would also determine your reaction. Yeah. Now, what do you think is the take in Beijing and in New Delhi at this point?
Indeed, now Donald Trump has his own style, which is very often less predictable. But fortunately, my institute, back 4 years ago, when Biden came to power, we made a prediction openly. We said Biden administration could be transitional. 4 years later, and now the United States may well have Donald Trump again, or a Donald Trump era without Donald Trump. In other words, we're not looking at Donald Trump individual as a leader, but we look at the fundamentals.
The populism, the social uprising.
Because Donald Trump's sense of the United States was more accurate than Biden. Donald Trump started each and every of his statements in the campaign is, America is a failing nation. That's true. Donald Trump has realized the U.S. economy has been hollowed out. And for the United States, the Ukraine crisis was business. For Biden, United States benefit from the war. For Donald Trump, United States lose a lot in the war. So he tries to put an end to this war. Different calculations. Plus, even for the tariff, whatever it's going up and down, the point is the United States has this accumulated debts of over $36 trillion. And this is unsustainable. So they must find a solution to it. So even without Donald Trump, another leader came out. He will also impose some kind of fight against other countries.
Now, I mentioned in my introduction that President Xi used this metaphorical reference to China and India as the dragon and the elephant. Yeah. What animal do you think at this point could symbolize the United States?
I like a metaphor Chairman Mao used, I think in 1947, in the 1940s. He said the United States, although nuclear power, is in fact a paper tiger.
Paper tiger.
Yeah. It looks strong, yet it's weak in many ways. And today it's even more so. At that time, China was at least 100 times weaker than China today. Even during that time, early 1950s, China was deeply involved in the Korean War, direct confrontation with the United States, which means United States today is more a paper target than any time. So this is obviously true.
What occurred to me just now is that in the North American mythology, coyotes is a prominent animal, and to some extent it's a trickster animal. It's smart, but it's deceitful. It uses a lot of languages, but it also may attack you. And you've been talking before about this cumulative effect of the debt problem, but there are also many cumulative effects across the board, even in the way the Americans are managing, for example, their public policy or how they relate to public protest, because they encourage public protest in other countries, not realizing that their people may also be learning, this destructive way. For example, but I mean, my question to you is bigger. To some extent, an argument could be made that the American system of government has come to a major crisis with many conflicting points, and to some extent, all of us in the international system have to deal with it. What is the Chinese way of dealing with it? Just wait and see? How do you mitigate then this negative outburst from the American continent?
And I have a very good conversation about 10 days, 15 days ago with Jeffrey Sachs, professor at Columbia University. He came to my institute, I gave a lecture. And he used an interesting metaphor. He said Russians play chess, Chinese play the golf, both involving strategies, comprehensive, holistic thinking. The United States play poker. Poker is always short term, goes by news cycles. It produces a lot of showmen, but not statesmen. As a result, it's actually hurting United States interest. You could win here and there, one or two battles, but you lose the war. I remember I just read an article in New York Times last month. The argument is discuss this U.S. AI strategy, or not strategy, the proposal put forward by Donald Trump. The article lamented that soon you will see in the AI fields not the competition between China and the United States, the competition between Shenzhen and Hangzhou or another Chinese city. In other words, without this overall thought through, comprehensive, holistic strategy, especially for United States, you have to think very hard. What's the end game? What's the final objective for your policy on China? You want to defeat China militarily? You want to defeat China economically? You want to defeat China technologically? None of them can be achieved. Full stop.